Today, finally, we're launching GPT-5. GPT-5 is a major upgrade over GPT-4 and a significant step along our path to AGI.
You heard it straight from Sama. Software on demand is going to be one of the defining characteristics of the GPT-5 era. Well, software on demand and agents aren't exactly the same thing, but who else is going to be building all this software if not agents? GPT-5 was built with agents and autonomous code in mind. You can see it right behind Sam at the beginning of the GPT-5 release announcement. It says it right up there on the screen, ChatGPT, developers, and enterprise. That's the intended audience for GPT-5. Sure, there are other use cases they talked about, like research, writing, health, and so on. But all of these will have builders cooking up GPT-5-powered solutions to bring them to life. This is what will bring AI into the mainstream. This is how it happens, through fine-tuning, wrappers, and automation, not prompt engineering. The average person's head explodes if you spend 2 seconds trying to explain that there's better ways to prompt AI that's not just babbling your stream of consciousness at it. Builders will be the ones to bring AI to the forefront. The opportunity here, particularly with GPT-5, is in closing the gap between the raw intelligence power of AI and the simple-minded masses. In that spirit, I'm trying to shift more of my time and energy now to building solutions rather than just offering services. We'll call that a work in progress. But today's video charts a path to that future with an exploration of vibe coding using Cursor and GPT-5 in preparation for much more building in my future. Not long ago, everyone was hype on Cursor for a while, and then they started charging more, and now Claude Code is what everyone is talking about. Obviously, the Cursor guys and OpenAI clearly noticed this trend as well because Michael Truel, the CEO of Cursor, had a little segment during the GPT-5 announcement.
So when we got access to GPT-5, we just set about using it on our actual work. And so to start with, as a test, we asked it to tell us something non-obvious about our code base. And within a couple of minutes, it buried into the code base. It identified a particular system that we use for remote code execution. And it identified a non-obvious architecture decision we had made. And then it also understood why we made that architecture decision. Those were architecture decisions and trade-offs that took humans weeks to think through. So it was kind of amazing to see its code base understanding abilities from the get-go.
That's really great. Not just the code writing, but actually the code reading and understanding.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it turns out there's so much more to software than just the emitting of the code.
Yes, yeah.
He was there promoting Cursor with GPT-5 and offering free use for paid subscribers for a limited time so that folks can try out Cursor with the new model. So I kind of wonder if A, OpenAI is about to buy Cursor, or at least B, there aren't more partnership and agentic features ahead for us. In any case, it made me feel more confident about sticking with Cursor and investing my time and money into it versus Claude, or at least seeing how it stacks up. You see, I think the battle lines are just beginning to be drawn and communities just starting to form around the various AI tech stacks that will become much more finite, determined, and mainstream in the future. People will gravitate towards Claude Code and Opus, or GPT-5 and Cursor, and so on. And this just demonstrates how early we are in this process. But regardless, when I finally got access to GPT-5 through proxies and was able to try out the model on August 7th, I found myself just kind of staring at the chat prompt window, trying to figure out what to do first. But after a long moment, I had a pretty great idea, just to ask the model itself how best to work with it. And so I did. I asked ChatGPT for tips and how it differed from 4.0, and for a guide on prompting best practices that would help me get the best results as quickly as possible. And this turned out to be a pretty good idea, as you'll see. It also lends further evidence to my theory that GPT-5 is a technical step forward rather than like a socially redefining one, closer to 0.3 than 4.0 in nature, and that it's most appealing to builders. This is evident from all the tips that I got from GPT-5 on how to work with it as well. Something like front-load constraints is not even something that you'd say to an average user. It wouldn't make sense unless they had had an unusual level of exposure to prompt engineering. But in general, these are pretty actionable tips and pretty instructive about the model from more of an intermediate or expert level. Things like plan more steps in advance, provide more detail, examples, and context, because the window is big enough, so use it to set tone and direction early, and it'll persist throughout a session. And then separate planning and coding, which reduces tangents, logical shifts, and prevents going in circles. If you're working out of the chat interface, it's helpful to start sessions with a prompt framework like role, goal, inputs, and constraints. And you could work from a saved prompt template to make this less time-consuming, since you'd have to do it every time that you're beginning a new session. And if you're working out of Cursor or something like it, then the coding agent itself has some of that already built in, but you're still going to want to identify and tag files, provide rules, a project plan, and so on to keep GPT-5 on track. So I took all of this great advice and put it to work on my own project. There's been something that I keep wanting to work on, a WordPress plugin for programmatic SEO and local service pages, but that I just never get to. So I decided to see how fast GPT-5 could help me create a prototype. In the end, my biggest takeaway from the GPT-5 announcement and my vibe coding experiments is that GPT-5 is a great partner for pair programming, but it's more designed to take over your busy work than to replace you as a software engineer. The more involved I was in solving problems or architecting solutions, the better that the AI seemed to work and the more progress that we made. And the more that I tried to sit back and let the AI drive, the more likely we were to end up just coding in circles, literally just working our way from one problem to the next and then back again to the first over and over again. But if I'm telling you that I think GPT-5 is pretty darn smart, why was this such an issue then? Well, here's what I think. GPT-5 attempts to be very intuitive, and it leaps to assumptions trying to be helpful and responsive. It needs to be told to chill, to plan without coding, and to provide options for you to research and weigh in on. I also think that WordPress plugins aren't as likely to be a big training focus as like React apps and so forth, because it didn't really seem that familiar with all the preferred WordPress behaviors, and it either hallucinated or made a mistake, take a pick, and created a permissions problem that took hours to resolve. Next time, I'll be sure to be much more involved and to break my process up into planning and building steps as GPT-5 suggested. But once I figured this out and started providing more senior dev style direction like this, we started making real progress. How it differs from coding with Sonnet and Opus, in my own limited experience, is that it writes cleaner, simpler code and it follows multi-step instructions much more rigorously. All of which makes the Cursor GPT-5 combo a worthy contender for my dev stack of choice. You see, I don't care about one-shot prompts or apps that only live inside of ChatGPT Canvas. I'm only interested in building mission-critical solutions, so a lot of the initial hype for these new models is uninteresting to me. However, clear iterative improvements and performance upgrades like GPT-5 has will make a huge difference in the quality of any software that's downstream of this new intelligence layer. And despite the insane competition between models, IDEs, and anything else that touches AI, this kind of chaotic energy just can't sustain forever. As the agentic races heat up, we'll each end up picking a platform and learning it deeply instead of bouncing around like we're doing now in our current hype phase. I'm definitely impressed with GPT-5. I was able to prototype a working WordPress plugin start to finish in under 12 hours. And this was something that I had tried before with Claude a couple of months back. At the time, I just kept vibe coding in circles like I was talking about, but now I cooked almost all the way through. Once we got around the permissions issue, it was a pretty straight line to a working MVP. Step by step, I just copied the errors I was encountering, uploaded and managed files, and ran tests, feeding it all back to the AI, even with screenshots when it helped, until we eventually got it working. My process was simple. I just worked with ChatGPT on the web to create a step-by-step plan and guidelines to follow using a prompt that you see here. And then I pasted that output into a markdown file in Cursor and executed it there to build out the plugin. Eventually, I had a dashboard, a way to create templates, and a bulk page generator all working. And all of this was 100% written by GPT-5. Now, I know that a lot of people have had success coding with Cursor before now. I've even had a little myself, or with Claude Code, or Lovable, etc. That's not new or revolutionary. But what I believe is new and substantively different is the base intelligence, the reasoning, available at an affordable price and with a cleaner and more restrained and controllable functionality that's configured primarily for API access and builders working on AI agents. I mean, imagine building agents that lacked these features. Sycophantic, wishy-washy, half-smart models can't be trusted to make our decisions for us. We need more complex models that require more nuanced prompts and that can follow orders without fantasizing false realities. It may not feel revolutionary to the average user yet, but I suspect that OpenAI has cooked up something which will be no less revolutionary than 4.0, but with a longer timeline and an admittedly rockier start.